Well, hello. It's another live Penguins chat here on Pittsburgh Hockey Now and Pittsburgh Sports Live. Hola, mis amigos. I'm Dan Kingerski. So, what shall we talk about today, huh? Whatever could Pittsburgh Hockey Now have done to the NHL landscape yesterday? Isn't that kind of cool that I always feel like the little engine that could? You know, everyone told us, don't do it. There was a whole lot of resistance when we started it, and believe me, a lot of that resistance has not gone away. But we just keep getting bigger, and we just keep adding good people to the fold and sources who are willing to talk to us or willing to talk to me again. You know, they remember me from a past life or have kept tabs on me. And one spilled some beans over the weekend, and we kind of sat on it for a couple of days. We thought about it. We talked to a few other people, and suddenly a story began to emerge. So as we do the Penguins live chat, we're going to talk, of course, first and foremost about Evgeny Malkin. Subset to that and kind of pinwheeling around Malkin will, of course, be General Manager Jim Rutherford, Phil Kessel, Head Coach Mike Sullivan. These are all sort of interconnected and interwoven in both micro decisions and macro, the big macro decision. And I apologized. I got caught up in the double overtime game last night. I didn't finish the big column for today, where I essentially really lay out and give you my opinion and my impressions after talking with folks on the Evgeny Malkin situation. So we're going to do a lot of that here on this show. Of course, you can hit me up on the chat board. Please do. Always appreciate when you participate and join in. And, well, you know the address. You're already here. Also hit me up on Twitter. And there's that. There's at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Let's take that off of there. You know, it's been like 2 weeks. We haven't chatted since I did the show live at Redbeard's. So is the sound okay? Everything good? It looks good. Levels look good, and everything else. What? Check. Hello. Let me turn it up. Okay, there we go. For some reason, it looked like the sound levels were dying. But everything's good, everyone? So here we go. Live chat. Let's begin. Let me get rid of that here. By the way, Leo says Happy Easter. Those of you who always participate in the chats or check these out, there's the grandson. Visited, I will not go by Pap or Pap. Just, look, I'm in my early 40s. I am G-Pops. Look, if you can go by P. Diddy or 50 Cent or whatever, I'm G-Pops, all right? There he is, just chilling before he and I went to the zoo. And, of course, my favorite meme of all time. Look closely. Look closely. How can I resist, right? Before we get into the serious stuff and everyone starts yelling and throwing things and... okay, so have I properly warmed you up? Now let's talk about Evgeny Malkin, shall we? Okay, everyone's saying the sound is bad. Let me try this real quick. How is that, everyone? Is that a little better? The lights are brighter. You can forget all your troubles. You can forget all your cares. Hopefully that works for everyone. Okay, so we're going to talk about Evgeny Malkin now. It's always one thing or another, is it not? Okay, hopefully someone didn't mess with the soundboard again. I'll have to kick somebody's bet. Okay, everyone says better. Beauty. Maybe I should start it again so I can edit later. Let me know if it goes again. Looks like just there was a bad battery. Someone ran it down. But Evgeny Malkin, here we go. So here from soup to nuts on Malkin. Here is my impressions, what I've been told, and even my opinion here at the end. Take it with a little bit of humanity because I'm getting opinions from people on the inside as well. And so it's a bit of an emotional give. It's not a factual give. Dan, we called X team at Y time, and we discussed Z. There's still a lot of emotion. There's still a lot of fluid parts to this. There is a certain acquiescence that I sense in the Penguins' front office, a certain sullen acquiescence. And what I mean by that is people would like to fight the idea of just tearing apart the Penguins' core, except for Sidney Crosby. People would like to say, no, let's go get it one more time. These are great players. But that sweep at the hands of the Islanders, who then got bounced by Carolina, just looks like an abomination. Given that and the insubordination that occurred all season with Kessel and Evgeny Malkin, the people at the top, and I mean Jim Rutherford, doesn't see a way forward as things were constituted. He was very unhappy to start last season. I get the impression he felt like he gave these guys one more chance. Like he kept everyone together. Carl Hagelin, Patrick Hornquist, Evgeny Malkin, Phil Kessel, who he really could have dealt last summer. And there was significant push inside the organization to deal with Phil Kessel last summer. He did Jim Rutherford. He kept everyone together, and they showed up for the season fat and happy. Sure, the Penguins were like a rocket ship. Malkin and Kessel put up huge numbers last October, but they were really not playing good hockey. And Sullivan was sounding the warning bell. By late November, he was pounding on the panic button and getting a lot from a lot of players. But the middle of the lineup was just a black hole. You remember Malkin to Brassard in that 3-center hole. Just was a black hole, and the Penguins were crippled by it. They were crippled by some bad attitudes, and Jim Rutherford did not appreciate it. This is not something that's been told to me. I think you see A plus B and C. I think sometimes it's a natural A plus B equals C. And so in this case, I don't think it's too terribly difficult to say, extrapolating his public comments last November when he called the core stale, and we know he wasn't happy, and he dealt Carl Hagelin. It's not a far leap. I think he feels a little bit burned by how little the core produced or gave the Penguins this season. It's one thing to have a slump. Sometimes the puck just won't go in. Like Patrick Hornquist said, what are you going to do when the puck won't go your way? Hornquist was playing his ass off. Some other guys weren't. Or at least were trying to play their own way and do their own thing without regard for the rest of the team. Evgeny Malkin, Phil Kessel, those are the two guys that we're talking about here. So I'm taking you all on the Magellan route here because I think the context of all of this is hugely important to understanding it. I want you to see the 30,000-foot view as well as the trees in the forest that I see on Twitter when everyone goes, you can't do this, you can't do that. When you look at it from the top view down, all of a sudden can't becomes can. And so back to Jim Rutherford, who I think is a bit red-assed mad. His core stayed together, and they got swept in the first round. You can't go forward from that. And so you take a look at the team and you say, what went wrong? And here you have a guy with the A on his sweater who's one of the best of all time, certainly one of the best Russian players of all time, and one of the few best players of his generation who has given the organization so much and has so much to give, but he wasn't giving it. And you say, why? And from there, and this is where we're into the situation. This is why Evgeny Malkin is tentatively available on the trade market. That's a huge caution word there, tentatively. One conversation could fix this. If Malkin decompresses at the Worlds and says, you know what? I want to be a Penguin. I want to go win this thing again with you. I'm going to buy in. That would go such a long way to quelling any ill feelings or any frustration and anger. And then the Penguins can then begin to use the scalpel instead of the axe for next season. They can begin to add or subtract other pieces. Olli Maatta, Phil Kessel. Those are, I think, the guys that are almost undoubtedly not going to be with the Penguins next season. I'll bet you a Permani sandwich that one of those guys are not with the Penguins, Maatta, Kessel, and I don't think either will be, quite frankly. Okay, so now we've got the sound fixed. Let me take a look at the chat board here real quick. Hey, Dan, looking forward to the offseason. Should be interesting to see what JR does to the team to shake it up a little bit. My predictions are the Kessel-less will be Kessel-less as a preseason. Maybe even Rust, too. Rust is an interesting case. I don't want to get too... Brian Rust is wonderfully versatile. He is a guy who fits in your lineup anywhere. He can play fourth line and add some offense and spark down there. He can fill in on the top line like he did this season. I get the impression that Brian Rust's game is still not complete. He's a late bloomer. He's 26, and I thought he was brilliant offensively at times this year. He showed some playmaking skills, and he showed some finish skills. But then at other times, oh my, he was just in the Sahara Desert, drier than anything. So I would be surprised if another team wanted to give full value for Brian Rust, because he does make, what, $3.5 million, or is it $4 million? So he makes a good bit of money, comparatively speaking. But he's also very valuable to the Penguins. He's a guy that fits into the system that they're evolving to, right? They're not going to be this globetrotter team playing on the rush, at least without a hard defensive effort first. Rust can do that. He can forecheck. He'll get back in his own zone, beat and bang, and be hard on the puck, hard to play against. That's the phrase we're going to hear a lot over the coming months and into next season. Hard to play against. Rust can be very hard to play against because he's right there. You can't outskate him. And he's kind of a hound on the puck, and he can finish. I think he has more finish and more consistency to add there. So that's my take on the potential of Brian Rust leaving. I'd be shocked, although I know some other of my colleagues have put his name out there. I don't see it, but I've been surprised. If some other team, let's say Ken Holland in Edmonton, goes, you know what, we need a couple Brian Rust types. Hey, Penguins. Then, Amanda, I'm glad you missed me. It's nice to be needed or missed, right? Cody says, I don't think Malkin is getting traded. I can see Kessel going before Malkin. Absolutely. Kessel is the low-hanging fruit on this. I don't quite know what to tell you on our hot dog guy, our Big Mac guy, our nachos eating won't give up soda guy. Did you all hear about I didn't do a story on it, and I got halfway done writing it, and it just, I had other things to write about that night or that week. The Penguins trainer, Andy O'Brien, not trainer, but he's skills coach. He works with the guys on nutrition and stuff like that. Was joking with the Spittin' Chicklets podcast about Phil here. He's like, you have to make certain concessions with Phil Kessel. They can't get him to give up, is it Coke or Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi? I don't know. Can't get him to give up the soda and a lot of the unhealthy foods that he enjoys. So, Kessel, yes, you're correct. Kessel will be dealt, or the decision to deal Kessel, I think, has been made. The order has been given. Is my sound a little... Oh, no, this is before the sound went bad. Okay. Now I'm skipping over the bad sound stuff. But let me... back to Cody. It is not a guarantee that Malkin is going to be dealt, but there is a bridge to gap there. Okay? There is absolutely a bridge to gap with Evgeny Malkin. He very well might say, to hell with this. He might want to go to Florida. He might want to go to New York, or you just don't know. Because he is a guy who can be a little mercurial. We've seen that with his play over the years. He can get down on himself. He can get frustrated or whatever it is. And don't underestimate the Marc-Andre Fleury factor here. And I hate to bring up Fleury because it just brings out the loonies on the comments and everything else. But first of all, Fleury brought everyone together in that locker room in a very effortless sort of way. Everybody was Flowers' best friend. You notice that? Everybody was his best friend. Without that, I think the Penguins have been more individuals since then. I don't know that a glue guy has really stepped forward since Fleury left after 2017. Why I bring that up is also, I wonder how many guys have seen how popular Fleury is in a new spot. Fleury's already beloved in Vegas. And tell me, besides hatred of Jack Johnson, besides really dumbass opinions on players like Eric Goodbranson, Matt Murray, Mike Sullivan, not a player, coach, obviously, and some really out there stuff, what unites Penguins Twitter? Is anybody, including Sidney Crosby, beloved at this point? The only guy who is Phil Kessel. Which, if you love hockey, Kessel kind of flies in the face of everything traditional about hockey. So, and believe me when I tell you, a couple of the players who were under that pile of dung that fans were just dropping all over players for the first several months of the season, they noticed. Now, to what degree they tuned it out, found it funny, ignored it, I don't know. But if you went to work every day and you knew that the floor below you wanted you gone, it adds a negative vibe in there. I wonder if a guy like Malkin, and this is just me spitballing here, having not talked to any of Malkin's people, and I've often wondered this about Kris Letang, who didn't get his just deserves, I think, from a lot of fans this year. Especially, he had a rough playoff series. He really had a fantastic regular season. 2 or 3 bad games in the playoffs, and it was all erased. I mean, how many times have you seen on Twitter, if he wants to play forward, I should make him a winger? I've wondered how many of the Penguins core, the older guys, look at Fleury's experience in a new city and say, I wouldn't mind that. Just spitballing there. So we don't know what's in Evgeny Malkin's head just yet. I think we're going to find out. I think Malkin will tell us what's in his head. So right now he's playing for Team Russia. You kind of, I mean, am I being clear here? Because I read a lot of the comments on the website and Twitter and Facebook yesterday after we broke the big story, and people just seem to kind of be missing the point here. When people make a blanket statement, Malkin won't be traded. How the hell do you know? Like, that's the response I want to give. It's a very real possibility, and the Penguins are teetering on that, crossing that line. They're going to cross the Rubicon, come through the gates of Rome, and once you do that, once you cross the line, it's really tough to walk it back. I think the Penguins are feet, toes up to the line right now. And that's news because they've never before been within a country mile of that line. Amanda asks, let me go back to Amanda. What do you think about the St. Louis situation? How can a team go from starting the season so terribly to getting in the conference final? What's the secret? They had a lot of new players in St. Louis. Ryan O'Reilly springs immediately to mind. They had a good bit of turnover, right? Sometimes that takes a while to gel. And when expectations are up here and the play is down here, I think also Mike Yeo is probably better suited in the assistant role. I don't think he's been very successful. His Minnesota saved his job a few years ago, when they went on a fantastic second half run like St. Louis did with him behind the bench, and so he got another year and a half out of it. But otherwise, Mike hasn't been a successful head coach. So when they put Berube behind the bench, and Jake Allen was also really bad this season. I mean, he probably erased the thinking around him as he's an up-and-coming number one goalie. I don't know that the St. Louis Blues would even look at him as a starting goalie anymore. So there was that, too. The team was struggling. The goalie was an abomination. You get Jordan Binnington in, Amanda, and everything clicked. When you start getting a couple of those saves a guy shouldn't make, it just picks everyone up. And O'Reilly gelled. So all of a sudden now they've got more players, and Tarasenko starts filling the nets, and all those things begin to fall into place when the mood of the team picks up, and a couple saves makes the difference. So that's what I think about that. That's all I got to say about that. Kyle, Malkin to Vancouver for Brock Besser and Elias Pettersson. Sure, Kyle. I love you, man. I'm pretty sure at this point, Kyle, you're just screwing with me, but I'll read it anyway. What are the odds on Gino being here at the start of the season? Jason asks. Jason, 50-50. And I say 50-50 because it's two people who have to make a decision. And Jim Rutherford can make a decision, but he can't make his decision without Evgeny Malkin. Malkin can make a decision, but he can't make it really without Jim Rutherford, right? Malkin can huff and puff and say, I'm staying, which is what a lot of fans seem to think he's going to do. He won't. But you can think that he will do that. Look, if your boss comes to you and says, look, we want you to transfer, how many people are going to stick it out in their job? Like, just put it in your own terms here. Your salary is going to be the same. You're going to go to a new building, a new floor with a chance to start fresh, where the boss wants you there. It's an enticing situation, isn't it? So I would put it at no better than 50-50 right now. If I had to bet $1, I'd bet on him being traded. But I'd only bet $1 because I don't know. That's just, I honestly don't know. And I wanted to get back into my impressions of this situation here. The Huberdeau rumors sound very interesting. Brian, do me a favor. Don't call it the Huberdeau rumors. I made sure I put that line in there yesterday. That was a name floated to us, was Hubie. But we don't know which side may have floated that name. So the Penguins can ask for anything they want. So let's say Florida brought it up. Then that would be a legit, cause to call it the Huberdeau rumors. But if the Penguins brought it up and Florida said, yeah, you get back to us when you lower the price, then it's not, right? So, but that's literally where that stands. The name was floated to us, but we have not yet been able to pinpoint the context, which side it came from, and I don't think we will, quite frankly. That's the toughest part. I was even after my source who identified for us last summer that the Penguins were after Bukestad. Yeah, remember that? and it only took 8 months, right? But so, and I can't get a good answer on which side, that very well could have been preliminary research. We just don't know where that name fits into the puzzle, other than it's a piece on the puzzle board. Nick asked, I think if we got a solid first prospect, a solid prospect in Hubie, I think I would do that. Yeah, that seems about like that would be top dollar for Evgeny Malkin, this guy. Or do you want to see this picture? Hey, NES Addict, how are you? What are the odds on Letang being here? I've seen folks speaking on him recently. I think most fans have almost insistently lumped him in with Malkin, Kessel, Maatta. Very big mistake. Letang is Kris Letang, but he had a great regular season. I think the coaching staff very much appreciates what he brings to the table. I've not heard of friction with Letang and Sullivan. I don't know that Letang likes any coach, quite frankly, but he wasn't openly defying him or doing his own thing. Guys like Letang will always have a bigger than average turnover number. But when you compare Letang to guys who play that many minutes, his turnover rate is not as egregious or ridiculous as you might think it is. He did have a bad playoff series. I would put the odds. I don't have a Kris Letang picture, so I'll use Mike Sullivan here. I would put the odds at Kris Letang returning to the Penguins at 90%. Look, somebody could stomp heavy to the table. That's the case with almost anyone, right? Let's just say Edmonton again stomps heavy to the table. Says, we want Letang. Give him to us. Not Ken Holland style, but you get what I'm saying, right? That it's, in that case, sure, you do the deal if it makes your team better. But Letang will be a Pittsburgh Penguin next season in all probability. Thoughts on a Kessel return? Not going to happen, Tyler. I think that decision has been made. And quite frankly, and I'm going to get into this. Let me get back to where's Sullivan here. Quite frankly, in order to save Evgeny Malkin's tenure with the Penguins, I think they have to excise that Malkin-Kessel option. They have to just chop it out. It's got to be done. It can't happen. I'm not saying Phil Kessel is a bad influence on Evgeny Malkin, but he's a bad influence, at least style of play, you know? They just, when they get on the ice together, they want to globe trot. It's worked for them each for 13, 14, 25 years. And they want to do it. Phil Kessel is not a guy who's going to hang on to pucks low. He's not going to be a guy who's tough to play against. I'm using all the Mike Sullivan cliches now, right? Phil Kessel doesn't fit. And with the Malkin Kessel monster, it's not going to work with Evgeny Malkin either. So in this case, I believe the decision has been made. Kessel will be somewhere else next season. We Cakin. Hey, Dan, who do you think Crosby wants to play with, defensively or offensively, that could possibly be a return for a big two forward? I don't think Sidney Crosby is going to be consulted on any of those decisions until maybe, and I stress the word huge, like a huge maybe on this. If the Penguins have a couple competing offers, right, they might say to Sid, hey, have you ever played with X at the Worlds, or what do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? They might do that. But I don't think that's a realistic question right now, Kakin. Crosby's going to be surprised as the rest of us, most likely. All right, Borgstrom would be a nice young guy to get from Florida. Look, there's infinite number of possibilities, right? I didn't put Hubie in the article because I thought that's who they should go after. That was the name given to us. That was one of the things that, look, I get frustrated a lot. Don't mind me. I thought I worded that very clear, that circle his name because we don't know which side it came from, but it's on the table somewhere, somehow. That wasn't me putting his name on the table. I also, he's a very small prospect, but he's got a wicked shot. The Montaniemi, I actually had not heard of him before, but he tore up the Finnish league as a 20-year-old last season. He was in the article too, along with Max Gilden, who's at New Hampshire right now. Management needs to be careful. I don't want to see a Yager-type situation, but this time it's more paranoia of competitiveness. Yeah, they do, don't they? Hopefully Penguins fans won't be idiots this time. Jaromir Jagr didn't want to be traded back in 2001, but fans gonna fan, right? And for years he was booed when he touched the puck, and it hurt him. You know how sensitive Jagr is. Oh, he heard it, and that hurt. Hopefully, if Malkin gets dealt, the last 13 years will be applauded, not booed when they show that tribute video. So realistically, Jason asks, what type of player or players do you see GM JR looking for to replace Kessel? I think you can replace Kessel with several different types of players, Jason. I wrote last summer, so I've got a little bit of a basis for this. If Kessel scores 80 to 90 points, given his power play to even strength ratio, which this year, what's 4/7? Or yeah, it's 40+% of his points are power play points. So that the team can absorb a hit on the power play because they've got enough talent to make that up, right? They're not going to score 20 less goals in the power play because Phil Kessel isn't around. They can get by with a mid-50s point producer, let's call it 55 points, 20 goals, 55 points, who plays the right way, who plays well defensively. That's all they need to replace Phil Kessel in the lineup. Mathematically, that's what they need. When you put it in those terms, it's not so daunting, is it? When you put it in that term, a 55-point player who is a plus guy, if you want to say analytics, even plus, as simple as plus minus, a guy who works his butt off and plays end to end and fights for pucks and does that sort of thing. Let's say, I almost wanted to say Mark Stone, but he makes a bit of coin, doesn't he? No 55-point guy who's going to be available jumps to the top of my head, but that's all they need, really. They can maybe absorb a bad contract in exchange for Phil Kessel at this point and get some compensation for it. But you're not going to get an Andreas Anastasiou or a William Karlsson for Kessel. You're just not going to do it. You're not even going to get. You won't even get a Kasperi Kapanen for Phil Kessel at this point. Just I could be proven wrong on this. So if I am, I understand that I am. I'm pretty good. I was pretty good this season. When you go back over my predictions and what I told you was happening and would happen, just was kind of proud of myself, actually. I nailed my preseason predictions. Crosby 100 points, Gensel 40 goals, Malkin Kessel broken up not long after Thanksgiving. Check, check, check. I also, I think what I did predict was that Brassard would eventually click with Kessel. Oops. I flipped my top when we lost Yager. Tom Wilson eats urinal cakes says, I was actually in D.C. for those few days. Oh, my gosh, D.C. went bananas. Dylan asked, will we be getting a new coach? No. There is only one player who could, I think, affect a coaching change, and that's Sidney Crosby. If Crosby were to say to Mario or Jim Rutherford, all right, guys, he's losing the room, he's lost the room, that would carry a ton of weight. Short of that, and I really believe that Sullivan's coaching is tailor-made for Sidney Crosby. I mean, everything Sullivan preaches is right down Crosby's alley, just right in the wheelhouse for Sid. Below the dots, hard aggressive play, forecheck, go to the net, honest hockey. That's Sid, right? Brandon Saad. He doesn't really fit with where the Penguins are going. I see Saad as a very similar player to Phil Kessel, actually. A lot of money, 20 goals. He's not a guy that's going to be tough on the wall. And the reputation that Saad is getting is that he isn't tough to play against. Now, I don't watch him game in, game out, and I love the guy. It's from Pittsburgh, but what is it, from Gibsonia, is it? I don't think that would be the Penguins' first choice. And there was some ugly talk that Saad was kind of about the money. Now, people get their feathers ruffled and they say ugly things like that. But those things travel in hockey circles too. With Brandon Saad, I think he's going to stay put. I think Saad has the potential to be that 40-goal guy that everyone's waiting for. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a different path, yeah? Plus, honestly, would y'all really want to play in your hometown? Like when you go to the grocery store or you just go out to buy a quick present for your wife, girlfriend, niece, nephew, kids, whatever, and everyone's all over you? Hey, remember when we went to high school together? I sat behind you in biology class. Hey, my cousin knows you. Hey, you played against my aunt's, uncle's, nephew's, third cousin, or all of that stuff. Like everyone, I don't know that I'd want to play in my hometown. I'd be much happier in a bigger city a bit away, but that's me. Hey, why don't you just trade the whole core of the team, Chris asks. We have to start rebuilding the team soon. Sid, Gino, Kessel, Letang are all getting older. Maybe taking a hit this coming season might be an idea. Okay, Kris. No. You're not going to trade Sidney Crosby ever. Okay? Crosby is a Penguin for life. And look, Letang is still producing at a high level at a pittance of the salary that he would command. If Kris Letang were a free agent after this season, he would get $10 million a year. He wouldn't get a 7 or 8 year deal, but he would get big money. He had a great regular season. All right, Sullivan goes nowhere, Jason says. Sullivan and Rutherford are on the same page, Chris chimes in. Absolutely. I really think, look, they can disagree. And I'm going to publish an article here as soon as we're done with this chat. I've got my column almost finished. Actually, I've been kind of dabbling in this. I have been helping some senior citizens with some planning issues, some government red tape, stuff around Medicare, Social Security, and that sort of thing. I've gotten involved in that, and there's quite frankly some bad salesmen running around. Men being salesmen, saleswomen, whatever, who make money by selling people things, and sometimes they're not careful and they sell grandma the wrong thing, and I'm helping grandma is what I've been doing and tinkering with that during the daytime. And I forget why I brought this up. There was a point to this. Oh, why I didn't finish the column. So I was doing some of that this morning as well. I find it rewarding, actually. So if you're 65 and you want a little help, just DM me. I know I've got a big audience in the senior and retiree community on YouTube, right? It's something that I enjoy doing. Oh, Chris says never said trade Sid. Well, Chris, you said Sid, Gino, Kessel, Letang are getting older. I just lumped them all together. So, okay. Point taken. You didn't say trade Sid. Letang gets hurt a lot. He does. He's a bit of a wrecking ball. And there's just no way around that. But I'll take 65 games a season of Kris Letang. There's going to come a day pretty soon with all these injuries catch up to Letang. But I don't think the Penguins are able to get a player for the next 3 years, let's say, who could provide for them that he's really good in the defensive zone. Believe it or not, Letang's good defensively. Who could provide that, who could provide the speed through the neutral zone. He's really sharp with the headman. Letang's just good. Where he gets in trouble, especially on the Penguins, right? And this is where I think some fans don't see the full picture. When Letang pinches, the high forward is supposed to come out. This causes havoc for the defense of the other team. Now the opponents are adjusting and shifting and switching and crashing, and this is when people get open. This is what Letang can do. Too often, the Penguins have too many defensively irresponsible forwards who go, cool, Letang's going to the net. I'm going too. And suddenly you have one guy back. And there you go. Here comes a 2-on-1, 3-on-2, whatever it might be. Not for $10 million would I take Letang for 65 games. We'll differ on that. If I had to sign Letang to a free agent contract right now, I would easily offer a $310 contract. Okay, $327. How's that? Let's compromise, addict. How about let's call it, if I had to write him a contract this summer, I'd offer him 4 years, $36 million. How's that? Based on his regular season, I still think he would be of value. I mean, think about this. Drew Doughty is making huge money, and I would take Letang over Doughty, especially after the season Doughty had. Well, I appreciate you checking in, Tom Wilson. Sorry about your headache. Well, no, I'm not. I caused your headache. Hit me up on the chat board. I think I've gotten through everybody to this point. There's my name. Do me a favor, hit the like and share button. I'm going to share this again real quick with everybody on Twitter so they can join us and have the fun too. I want to get back to the point I was making earlier. I really do. I want to get back to that. Because I think, and I appreciate you as an audience. You have allowed me to explain so many things, and you've listened this season. And I really thought for a while we were actually beginning to soften that rough exterior of the Penguins' Twitter for a while on players like Jack Johnson and Goodbranson, and maybe we did. It's not too terrible right now. With Jim Rutherford and the Penguins front office. If you've stuck it out this long, I might as well empty the cachet, right? It is my belief, after talking with everybody, that Jim Rutherford is the guy leading the decision-making process in this, and there isn't nearly the resistance this summer to Jim Rutherford's thinking that there was last summer. I believe last summer was a split decision on Phil Kessel. I believe at different parts of the organization were ready to move on last summer on Kessel. But Rutherford never got close to a deal even during the draft. There was some talk, and we were told that a couple teams made some very intriguing offers to the Penguins, but no one was ever told. Not Drager, not Elliot Friedman, not lowly Pittsburgh hockey now, us on the bottom of that totem pole, of a close deal with Kessel. And that was because Rutherford wasn't on board with it. Now, some other parts of the organization, I think, were. So there was a split decision this year. And Jim Rutherford wants to send a message to his locker room, right? He wants more Stanley Cups, and he doesn't believe this group can do it. He's probably right. I mean, go ahead, do all the research you want. You have to show me a core of 32, 33-year-old players who have come back to win a Stanley Cup together. Jonathan Bomboli broke it down. The Islanders, the Oilers, in their heydays, the Canadiens, these guys would hit their prime mid-late 20s. Like the later 20s is when they won their Stanley Cups, by and large, in the modern era. I can't speak to the original six. I almost don't think that would apply here because it was just a different world back then. So if it happened with the Canadians who reeled off how many championships in a row in the 50s, 60s, whatever, if it happened then, I don't think it applies now, since the league went to 12 and 21 and 26 and 30 and 31 and then now 32 teams. You're not going to win a Stanley Cup with a core of 32-year-old players. So be cognizant of that fact as well. Be cognizant of the fact that Jim Rutherford has every right to feel a little bit disappointed that he trusted these guys and kept them together. And they not only didn't perform up to par, they didn't behave up to par. Insubordination is what I mean by that. So all of those things going to get dumped into the stew here. So my sense is, and this is a human sense which is very fallible, and if public comments start to come out on these topics, my opinion is likely to change based on those comments. But this is just my reading of what we've been told, that people would like to oppose the Malkin debate internally and say, shut it down. They would like to do that. But everyone kind of knows deep down that they have to have this conversation with themselves, with Evgeny, and with other teams. I think there's almost a resignation to that very unfortunate fact. Even people who would like to say no, it's going to happen. You guys can't even see Bob and Doug here today. I'll put them there. Can you? I always get them. It's been too long since I've seen the movie. Doug was Rick Moranis, right? And Bob was Dave Thomas. Oh, you hear the thunder outside. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, that's PNC Park. Someone must have hit a home run. We are downtown. We're high above Market Square. Oh, and Bill Hillgrove will join him. We'll give Bill a case of beer here. A case of the McKenzie Brothers beer. That would be a fun broadcast, wouldn't it? So, anyway, let me jump back to YouTube. I really do appreciate everyone hanging out with me here. Coming up on 50 minutes, I probably won't do too much longer. Does Gino have a no trade? He has a no movement, which in this case is effectively a no trade. There's slight semantic differences. No movement means you can't be sent down. You can't, they just can't touch you. No trade refers specifically to no trade. So it's a no movement clause. Malkin will have to approve and agree to be traded if that's what all parties involved. And let's just say Edmonton really wants Malkin. Malkin doesn't want to go to Edmonton. I'm not saying that definitively. I'm just saying, this is the hypothetical scenario. Malkin can say no. So that's going to be a complicating factor if the Penguins get to level 2, level 3 with this process. Yep, all the regulars are here. Appreciate everyone. Tanger plays with fire, Matthew says. I agree with that. Look, Letang was really good this season. I'm going to challenge you to not be those people who cling to an old opinion, right? So many people the Penguins get swept. What did certain people do? They went back and they grabbed the Jack Johnson opinion. Good Lord. Yeah. Then people started throwing Eric Branson's name. Oh, he makes too much money. Dude makes $4 million and he played his tail off for the Penguins. But they were recycling that old Vancouver opinion. Because when things are going wrong, people search for opinions. And hockey has done a terrible job marketing its game, right? By that, I mean most American fans, even hardcore hockey fans, really have nothing but the basic understanding of X's and O's. And that's no one's fault. It's hockey. It's PR. It's organizations like the Penguins who marketed players over the game for 2 generations just to sell tickets to survive. You're seeing it in Carolina. You saw it in Nashville a couple of years ago when the party was the reason to buy a ticket, not the hockey. And they're hoping people get in the door and just enjoy it. I've known PR people who didn't know the first thing about the X's and O's of the game. And all, So that, I think, creates a certain vacuum for player blame. It's all Jack Johnson's fault. If Gary Malkin and Phil Kessel, if they in play with Jack Johnson, they would have a good season. Yin's just all Yin's on Twitter, defending Jack Johnson, that Bud Moonshine. I ran the numbers on Twitter the other day. Johnson only played with Malkin and Kessel for about 400 minutes at even strength. You're like, wow, that's a lot. Well, actually, it's less than 1/3 of the time. It's about 30 28 to 30%. So, blaming others for Malkin Kessel numbers, I know is a big defense. Just knock it down right now. Because 70% of the time, they had other defensemen. And they let them down, too. It was Malkin Kessel. It wasn't Jack Johnson. It wasn't Eric DeBranson. It wasn't Marcus Pettersson, Kris Letang, Brian Dumoulin, Olli Maatta, Justin Schultz, Jamie Alexiak, Chad Ruedel, Zach Trotman. Who am I missing? Have I done them all? Did I catch them all? I feel like I'm missing someone, like obvious. No, I guess I did get them all, didn't I? Anywho, so here's another guy that I think maybe is taking some unfair criticism. Let me get my name off of there. Here's Mike Sullivan at the draft last June in Dallas, telling me. I was part of the scrum, but I asked the question that he actually has a solid relationship with Phil Kessel. That sometimes the media infers things that they didn't mean to infer, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, it's part of your job and it's part of my job. What are you going to do? And Sullivan did smooth it over with Kessel. It didn't mean that he necessarily got the best out of Kessel this year. When the games got tough, Kessel didn't come through. That I think was very unfortunate. I guess I should maybe not say this, but I'm going to anyway. I thought Phil Kessel owed the Penguins a bit this season. I wrote about it the other day. There was a couple shifts when Kessel was with Brassard. So we're talking December here. Maybe it was January when the excrement was just all over the fan. In which Brassard and, let's say, Simone or whoever the left winger would have been, Rust. Zach Aston-Reese actually was on that line, I think, for a minute, too. Went barreling into the corner to fight for the puck. And Kessel was at the midwall on the other side of the ice, almost leaning against the boards watching. There were several of those moments when Kessel was completely disengaged from the play. Now, that's bad. It got worse when Brassard returned the favor to him. And I can see it clear as day watching it, in the old memory banks. Brassard kind of coasting to the other side of the ice for Phil Kessel one time and not engaging in what should have been a pretty good puck battle and moving it around. And of course, the Penguins don't get possession of the puck, and here comes the other team, et cetera. So there was clearly that was never going to work. So when Jim Rutherford tells all of us, he never thought his team became a team, that's part of it. That's all part of it. And all of the people who were involved in that are guilty. So, unfortunately, Malkin has to provide a couple answers to his team. Phil Kessel, I don't think, gets the benefit of the doubt in that one. I think his act wears a bit thin. You can love him all you want. Not going to dissuade you. The Penguins need a couple guys who are harder to play against, and they're going to move on from Phil Kessel. Olli Maatta. I guess we can get to Olli Maatta here in the waning minutes. I say waning. I might go another half an hour. You never know what the hell I'm going to do. If you all start throwing stuff on the chat board, I'll go as long as you want. And yet I don't have a girlfriend. Anyway, oh, man. I say things I shouldn't. Hopefully you forgive me for those jokes. They slip out sometimes. I know I shouldn't. Anyway, Olli Maatta. It was the one time that I really kind of pulled my punch in writing a story. We had been told Maatta was on the block and in discussions, was part of discussions, and that was kind of at the height of getting my butt kicked over Jack Johnson stuff publicly. And I kind of softened the story that Olli Maatta was available, not that the Penguins were putting Olli Maatta in discussions. That was a huge mistake on my part. And at least one other competitor subtweeted me, even said something publicly, kind of throwing shade this way. I don't forget these things. I don't throw shade to competitors. What they say, what they do is between them and their audience. I'm not going to tell you somebody was lying or wrong or I'm not going to cast any aspersions. That's between you and them. And I hate when people feel the need or the ability to take shots at us. That drives me nuts. Anywho, Elliot Friedman put it out late last week, or was it this weekend, that the Penguins did try to trade Maatta. And so that's why I finally chimed in with what we knew back in January, is that Maatta was part of both the Anaheim and LA Kings discussions as the Penguins made those trades in the first half of the season. Things kind of boiled down. Maatta didn't fit in the final puzzle, but he was certainly in those talks, and the Penguins made him available and thought that they maybe had more of a chip than it turned out that they did. I don't know where it broke down. Could have been money, could have just been timing. But Olli Maatta, a safe bet. Anyway, it's never a safe bet a guy gets traded. But if I'd bet that dollar that Maatta isn't a Penguin next season. Let's see here. I like how Goodbranson played for us, but the fact that we have a lot of guys who are overpaid for one, I'm not sure what you're saying, Lan047. Just you're saying you have some guys who are overpaid? Look, $4 million for a defenseman like Goodbranson is not really overpaying him. It's a third-pairing guy who can play 17, 18 minutes and reduce the number of cheap shots your stars take. And think about this. Malkin was injured on a cross-check from Robert Bortuzzo. But that was in front of the net. Malkin went into Bortuzzo's office. I didn't really have much of a problem with it. I mean, he caught Malkin, don't get me wrong. Should have been a pretty big penalty. But just the way it just worked out that way, you see that same cross-check 10 times a game. And a guy doesn't miss 3 weeks with, bruised sternum, ribs, whatever Malkin did have there. Besides that, can you tell me one cheap shot that the Penguins really suffered? I don't recall Crosby getting too much this season, especially in the second half when Goodbranson arrived. Even when they played the Capitals, Tom Wilson was on his best behavior. How often does that happen? So $4 million for that little bit of insurance policy. And when Wilson did misbehave, he went straight at Goodbranson. He knew he would have to deal with him. It wasn't that's part of the problem with a guy like Ryan Reeves, who's a fourth liner. You have to deploy Reeves, and you're only going to do it 7-8 minutes a game. And you're not going to do it much in the third period or the second half of the game. And so if Tom Wilson, say, takes a shot early third period, he knows he's not going to have to answer to Ryan Reeves, probably. It's a different story when you've got Goodbranson. And Goodbranson is so humble about it. I've talked to him a little bit about it in the locker room. He's like, look, it's been a part of my game since junior. I'm a big guy. I realized I could help teams win by doing it, and I don't mind it. Paraphrasing, of course. He's pretty well spoken. I dig Olli Maatta. He just gets killed by fans and gets burnt way too much. Dan, don't admit that. It makes you look bad that I pulled my punch on the Maatta story. Look, I'm a human being. Sometimes I have to just dial it back because, I'm not always going to go to level 10. I gave you the good information. That's the important part. Dig Olli Maatta. Yeah, he gets killed. Maatta really is a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde right now. When Maatta came back late in the season, and when he came back at mid-season, he was fresh, he was fast, he was really good. I'm talking B+, A- level defender. He was good. He was moving well. But he wears down very quickly. And when he wears down, he gets slower. His feet stop moving. And that's when Maatta gets in trouble. I don't know that, he didn't have a bad turnover year. He wasn't making bad decisions with the puck, but you're right. Teams were getting after him and getting at him back on the blue line. Love these chats. Keep them going. Well, good. Do me a favor, James. Click on that thumbs up button. The more likes we get, the more thumbs up here on the YouTube page, the broader they share it. See, I told you 15 minutes ago I was going to wrap it up. 15 minutes later, I like 44. That's good, Branson, yeah. I had neighbors in the house next door knocking on my door during the playoffs because I was screaming at the TV because Kessel was not engaging. Oh, I love that. Good Branson won me over from the jump. He was. What did I tell you back in February when they got him? That the Penguins saw some skills, give him a minute, give the Penguins a minute to see if they can mine something there. And it worked. Good Branson said from the get-go, he was never comfortable in the Vancouver system. The Penguins have more layers, and by that, more options, more outlets, more decisions, actually, for a defenseman to make, more options more with the puck. Vancouver, I think, had that Anaheim-type, very simple system. You get the puck here, you're going to go there with it. If they're going to cover that, here's your secondary option. Well, that can work. But the Penguins are talented. Talented players don't necessarily go to spot A or B because they see what the greater possibility, and that's when things break down, or did anyway. So the Penguins have always just had more layers to keep that, that game a little more fresh and less simple. Medina says, well, that was an interesting comment. What are you talking about, Medina? By the way, thanks for joining us. What moves do the Penguins have to make? Great question, Adi. What moves do the Penguins have to make to be competitive if they want to keep Malkin? Well, part of that will be the return for Phil Kessel and Olli Maatta. I don't know that they're going to get much in return there, but they'll free up a lot of money. And then you start looking at free agents. I think the Penguins could use a scoring winger. They could use a top six winger on either side, really. They could use a top six right winger, top six left winger, and they would have space, or certainly a need. They kept Malkin. That would put Brian Rust down on the third line, or even on the other side of the top line, whatever. I think if you did that, I don't buy the fact that the Penguins' defense isn't very good. I think that is grasping at straws, and that's kind of playing into the medicine man ignorance type thing. The Penguins' defense was wonderfully solid. It's good. Don't forget Justin Schultz will come back next year with a training camp and be solid. He won't be trying to catch up. Gutty is worth $4 million. Yep. Oh, that I don't have. I work way too much to be involved with other people. My friends know. Hey, we invited Dan out. Yep, Dan's writing. Dan's busy. This is what Dan does. Dan works. Dan enjoys working and talking in third person. Are you ignoring my video game trade of Stammer for Gino? I didn't see it, Jason. I'm sorry. What the hell, right? You want Stamkos for Malkin? I'll do it. Toss in a first-round pick, too. Rangers full rebuild. Okay, I'm reading this comment here. Devils rebuilding. Philly average. CBJ loses a lot of UFAs. Washington a year older. Carolina young with cap space. Isles lots of UFAs. Just don't do anything stupid, Penguins. Fair evaluation of the Metro? I think so. Although CBJ has a chance to be very good next year. I think they've got their core of physical guys still there. Cam Atkinson is going to be around, and they can replace Sergei Bobrovsky. Right? They might dial up L.A., who has to be looking at rebuilding, and say send Jay Quick this way. I don't know, but as we've seen, look, Jordan Binnington, Curtis McElhenney, Peter Mrazek, Robin Lehner, Philip Grubauer. What other ham and egg goalies were playing into the second round, right? So I don't necessarily think you need a star goaltender to be competitive. You just need a goaltender who plays well, makes the stops he has to make, and a team that commits itself to playing some defensive hockey. But you're right. The Rangers are in a full rebuild. The Rangers were really soft last season. Their announcers even just had to call it out late season. It got so bad. I tend to wonder, like, oh man, I'm going to get in trouble with this one. If Malkin wants New York City, let's just say that's the case. Zibanejad would be the kind of center the Penguins would need in return to replace an Evgeny Malkin. That's me spitballing. There's nothing behind that. So please don't think that I'm dropping some hidden knowledge on that one. I'm just saying Zibanejad would be the kind of player that would make sense and that the Penguins would need in the absence of a Malkin. But the Rangers have to get harder to play against. They were pillowy soft. Okay. When that comes to mind about the wingers, I think of Gustav Nyquist. Good name. That's maybe who I was thinking of when I said I don't have to see you. I was thinking of Nyquist, too. Yeah. Vegas has some guys that they can't keep everybody. And Toronto has some big decisions to make with some players that the Penguins might be able to kind of catch on the rebound, too. I'd give Gino one more season until the trade deadline. Mutation, how are you? If you want my honest opinion on that, Mutation, I think you're exactly right. If this can be salvaged, salvage it. If it's a work in progress, let it be a work in progress. I would hate to see Evgeny Malkin be traded when it could be saved. I think Malkin and Crosby deserve to ride off into, and probably Letang in that same breath, deserve to ride off into the sunset in a Penguins uniform. Not everything is always possible. Let's see here. Nyquist is nice. All right, kids. That's $1.15. And just because I've got it in the queue, I've also got Lone Star JR. What other pictures didn't I use here? I don't think I used this one either. Oh, you know what? Let me do this. Before we go, don't leave me. Don't leave me, please. I get lonely in the studio. I have the psychiatrist down the hall bring me some pizza occasionally. He leaves it on the doorstep just so I can survive. Coffee and pizza. Here is This was a GIF that the anti-Jack Johnson crowd was floating. Look at Johnson, how terrible he played it. Now, that's Johnson in the circle. This is game 3. And this was used as proof that Jack Johnson's a bad defenseman. So I've marked it up. And I think I may have used this at Redbeard's a couple weeks ago. Just to kind of circle back this, because I really want everyone to understand kind of the nuts and bolts of the game, right? So there's Johnson actually taking out the play at the blue line. There's Malkin on your far right of the screen. That's the slash. Malkin has his guy. There's Kessel north of Jack Johnson. He's got his guy. There's Justin Schultz with his guy at the bottom. Like, everybody is covered here. Johnson nullifies the Islanders' rush. The puck squirts free. The Islanders actually ended up, they didn't score on this play. Yes, they did. Or I think Brock Nelson may have had a grade A scoring chance, whatever it was. But this is the kind of hocus pocus or lack of understanding. I think that people get mad and they just, Jack Johnson was on the ice, so somehow it was his fault, blah, blah, blah. And this is one of those plays that people were using. So there, when you see that GIF float around Facebook or Twitter, you'll see it, because Brock Nelson then came around the net. Kessel whiffed and Malkin whiffed on their guys. And it was nearly disastrous. I think a minute later it was disastrous. Anywho, that's it for me. It's been a long day. I'm hungry. By the way, if you stuck it with me this long, let me show you a little something. I'm going to show you a secret. We're going to be making I wanted to make the big announcement today, and I'm a little upset that we couldn't. But things don't always work on my schedule. Let me show you this. You ready? Pittsburgh hockey now has been very blessed and very fortunate. This season, our growth has been extraordinary. And I mean extraordinary, beyond what I thought possible. And my web guy is telling me, based on trends and stats and figures, that next season is going to be ridiculous if we can keep up the same pace and level of work that we put in this season, which is both exciting and terrifying that I'll have to work that hard again. But other people around the league have noticed as well. You ready? Ready for the big secret we're going to announce? There's no content on it yet. Take a look. Look at it. Yep, we're going to franchise. There's going to be several Hockey Nows around the league, around the country, around Canada. We're going to be dotting the city, or the league with our formula. We're franchising. We're branching it out. And I can't tell you how humbling it is. Others have noticed what we've done, willing to give up jobs, willing to come on board with us and do what I've done. So it's wild. Did you see that again? There. Hopefully in the next 24 hours, that's going to be full of Eastern Conference content. Oh, I knocked Bill Hillgrove over. Man overboard. All right, so that's it for me. I appreciate you hanging out. I will see you at Redbeard's. Redbeard's for happy hour. It is Wednesday, right? All you can eat wings at Redbeard's. It's only $12.99, I think. And I've come to appreciate Redbeard's beer selection as well. I'm getting a little tired of 60 beers on tap, and 40 of them are IPAs. And I'm getting to the point where I've had every single one, and so many of them taste the same. I appreciate Redbeard's beer selection. Hot wings. Yesterday was $2 tacos. Do me a favor, go to Redbeard's. Click on that link on the website. I'll do this again next Wednesday. Once a week, I'll be doing this. I'm also refiring the podcast for the summer, too. So you'll have an audio spilling of guts, too. Till we talk again, kids, have fun.